Hey everybody, it's Blzane, and today you got a 2-for-1 special where we're talking about not only Cleric subclasses, but also Commander subclasses as well. So hopping straight in and starting off with everyone's favorite support class, the Cleric. The first subclass is actually a little more infliction-based rather than being supporty, and that's going to be the Inquisitor. Now I will say 100% in terms of flavor, this subclass is actually amazing, with your first feature being called Vanquish Heresy, in which your kind of sub-feature for that one is going to be Iron Resolve, in which you're going to gain advantage on any check trying to intimidate, charm, or taunt you. So kind of nice, lets you be a little less controlled by others. And then right after that, you're going to have Rebuke Heretics, which basically just says that if you intimidate an enemy with your channel divinity, then if they do take damage, they are not forced out of it, which is really nice. Those infliction conditions that you put on people aren't going to be nearly as easily removed. And now the final sub-feature you're going to get for this subclass is going to be Divine Blessing, or a new one rather, and it's going to be Chastise. And just to clarify, if you don't know how clerics work, they get Divine Blessings, which are inherently like modifiers that you can put on your spells so that they do other things. And this one is going to basically mark the enemies, or in flavor text, it's going to brand them as a heretic. And when they are branded in this way, you gain advantage on any insight and intimidation checks made against them, and then you also deal 1 more damage to them. So again, just a nice little branding that you can do to someone, and then it helps you out in that combat. And then finally, my favorite part of every subclass, the flavor feature, which in this case is Divine Interrogator. And this one is so good. Basically, whenever you are interrogating someone, you can ask them a yes or no question, and then they're going to make a charisma saving throw. If they do fail it, then they must answer you truthfully. They don't have to answer, but they just can't lie, right? So like if it's a yes or no question, they don't have to say yes or no, but they cannot give you a false answer, which in most cases is kind of going to typically answer the question for you. And then coming up on Cleric's second subclass, it's going to be Priest, which is going to be your classic supporty, I heal my party, I give them barriers, all that good stuff Cleric. Now your first feature is going to be Sanctification, and let me say, as far as support classes go, this might be one of the strongest support subclasses in the game, because anytime with Divine Barrier that you spend MP to heal, any overhealth that you end up healing actually just gets added to temp HP, which is super nice, because that's one thing that feels bad as a support member, is especially at the beginning of combat. Sometimes you just kind of feel like you can't do anything, but in this case you can give temp HP, and then the other one, Spare the Dying, whenever you spend MP to heal someone on death's door, you're going to get additional healing on top of that. So I kind of like to flavor it as like, you're feeling the pressure, you're getting amped up, so your adrenaline kind of naturally amps up your healing effects, because, well, your party member is about to die. And now for the last actual combat feature for this subclass, Hand of Salvation might, hands down, pun intended, be one of my favorite features, because I just love the idea of this. And it's basically when someone or a willing creature within 5 spaces of you is going to get hit by an attack, for 2 action points, so it is expensive, you can as a reaction pull them within 1 space of you, and then that attack misses, has no effect, all that good stuff. So sick. I love this so much. I love the idea of, as a cleric and as a priest, you can kind of reach out with this almighty hand and just yank your teammates back towards you. So sick. And finally, their flavor feature, which I actually think is one of the more stronger, useful flavor features, just in terms of what it could possibly do for the group, is you have advantage on any check made to figure out, say, a disease or a poison or things like that, just to figure out what is ailing a creature, what is making them hurt or not feel good. So real solid, just easy flavor feature. And hopping into the Paragon Cleric stuff, the first one, or first option you have, is going to be the Bountiful Blessings talent option that you can take. And this one's pretty simple. As we talked about earlier, blessings are kind of just like spell modifications that you can add in, and this allows you to get them faster, get them easier. You don't even have to spend the action point to pray to get it, and then on top of all that, you can have 2 blessings at the same time, which is pretty sick. And then your second option for Paragon is going to be Divine Cleanse, which actually comes with 2 unique abilities. And the first one's going to be Saving Grace, where if a ally or someone within 10 spaces fails a save, you can spend an action point as a reaction. And it's not just giving them advantage, you actually make a check yourself, either against that spell's save or against the enemy's spell attack, spell check if they made one. And then if you succeed on that, then your teammate inherently succeeds that save. So kind of a cool way to, again, protect your allies and really lean into that side of it. And then on top of that, you also get the Cleansing Intervention, which whenever you use your Lesser Divine Intervention trait, which, if you don't know, is basically just kind of a mass healing that you get to do, and you get to spread healing amongst your team. You also will get to cure things like a poison or a curse or a disease. Now, it is important to note that in order to do this, your check still has to beat whatever the DC of that disease or poison or whatever it was is, but still it's just kind of nice to have an additional tag along with something that already heals your team. Now, for all my fellow team leaders and team captains and all those good people, we got the Commander coming at you. And starting off with the Commander subclasses, we're going to have the Crusader subclass, which is going to be kind of your little more typical tank team assister kind of vibe. And this is going to start with the Virtuous Vanguard feature. Now, the Virtuous Vanguard is going to provide you 3 different things. The first one being the Aura of Courage, which is basically anytime someone is in your commanding aura, which for those that are not aware, is a 5-space aura around you that you can kind of activate and have active as a commander. Then when they are in that, they're going to have advantage on any save against effects that would frighten, intimidate, or rattle them. Again, leaning into that, team leader, making sure the morale of the group is not falling. And then the next thing you get is going to be Protective Orders, which whenever you do a commander's call, which again, for those that aren't aware, basically is just you having someone in your team do something else so you can have someone attack on your turn or move or things of that nature. They're also going to gain a resistance to the next damage taken, so letting them do their thing and keeping them alive longer. And then finally, the last combat feature that you're going to have is Restoring Rally, where basically when a teammate is bloodied, typically you can give them temporary HP, but in this case, they can regain that amount of HP instead. So kind of nice, you can actually heal them instead of just stacking temp HP on, which is typically better. And the flavor feature for this one I think is kind of funny. You have advantage on checks to try to make sure that creatures are not afraid. Now, to be clear, this does not interact with conditions, so if something is like literally frightened, like as in has the effect, you're not going to get them out of that easier because it's a flavor feature, but rather if someone or an NPC more so is afraid of a situation or scared to go into a dark room or something like that, you have advantage on the check to persuade them to do so. And then our second subclass for the commander is going to be the Warlord, which, hey, wouldn't you know it, they like to get in the mix a little bit more. Now, Warlord's first feature is going to be Offensive Tactics, which has some fun ones. The first one being Morale Breaker, where once per combat, whenever you use your commander's call, which as we discussed is typically to help your teammates do things like moving or attacking, you can also force an intimidation check for free on an enemy within 15 spaces of you. And I just love the, again, kind of flavor of this in mid-combat, of you're commanding an ally to do something so severely that you are intimidating the enemy in the process. And now that second sub-feature for Offensive Tactics is going to be Battlefield Tactics, where as long as a creature is in your commanding aura and they are flanking a target, which is what it sounds like, right? It's like, when you have 2 allies and then an enemy in the middle, they're going to have +1 damage on their first melee attack. So, some classic Warlord stuff. And then on top of all this, your final actual combat feature you're going to get is a brand new Commanding Aura option, because your Commanding Aura has a few different things you can do with it. This one is Priority Target, which is amazing for things like boss fights, because you pick a target within 15 spaces, and as long as your allies are within your aura, then on their first attack against that target, they're going to gain advantage. So a nice little bonus that, especially if you're doing like a solo boss fight, can be seriously devastating. And then finally, for your flavor feature, you're going to get Battlefield Tactician, which basically just gives you advantage on any check trying to do things like battlefield strategy or doing different battlefield tactics or things like that. And hey, if it were my character, I would just cheese that into being really good at board games, because, a lot of tactics in there, right? Getting little pieces moving. I'll argue with my DM later. And now finally getting into the Paragon Commander, the first one we have is Seize Momentum, which is basically just anytime an ally that is in your commanding aura gets a heavy hit on them, you can use your commander's call as a reaction. So kind of nice whenever they get hit real hard. As a reaction, you can make them move away, you can make them attack back, you can do things like that. And the second Paragon option you're going to have is Coordinated Command, which allows your commander's call to basically affect 2 people if you're willing to spend a stamina point on it, which, to be clear, can be extremely powerful. Getting 2 attacks out of one commander's call or 2 moves out of one commander's call is super effective and can do a ton for your battlefield pressure, where you are, and just kind of overall damage output. Now that's going to be it for these subclasses today. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you like what you see and you like DC20, please check the description below. I have a link that'll send you straight to the DC20 website where you can get the current PDFs, you can get old PDFs, and you can get magazines that include other stuff. Tons of options, and then you also get to support me as a creator, which is great. But nonetheless, I hope y'all have a great day, and I will see y'all on the next one. Peace out.